million kids just dropped out during COVID shutdown and remain AWOL. Too bad they aren't the children of illegal aliens. Then we'd spare no expense to find them and pay them reparations for the education they missed. I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is the borderless, wall-less Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Today, we start with a new study that finds 3 million children just vanished, dropped out of full-time public school during the pandemic. And this is a mixed message sort of a story, right? I mean, on the one hand, that's 3 million kids who aren't getting in-your-face transgenderism, who aren't getting in their face watered-down cultural math. On the other hand, what happened to those kids? It's going to be very interesting to see what happens to them moving forward. And this is a New York Times report that about 3 million students have just completely dropped out of full-time school because of the shift to virtual learning. And the poor and minorities, as always, hit most. So as bad as it was for your kids, the average kid to go to school, apparently, like everything else in this world, if you were in any way disadvantaged, it's made worse. By one estimate, 3 million students nationwide, roughly the school-age population of the state of Florida, stopped going to classes, virtual or in person, after the pandemic began. And it cited a study from Bellwether Education Partners. The study also found that in major cities, including cities like Los Angeles, California, Washington, D.C., where teachers' unions have pressured school districts to keep virtual learning and teachers out of classrooms, students dropped out more. So the more the teachers' unions pushed for no live school, the more student casualties nationwide. And
basically the teachers' unions are the ones in the big cities, and the big cities is where the minorities live. Mm-hmm. Therefore, most of the dropouts are related back to that. But according to this study, they talked about in LA how it's a 15 to 20% of English learners, students in foster care, students with disabilities, and homeless students did not access any of their district's online educational materials from March through May.
So question.
15 to 20%, and it's not those white kids that we're always talking about.
So if homeless kids didn't access, how would they be able to otherwise? How do you measure? Question. How do you measure homeless participation? I mean, if you don't got a home to go to, but you got a cardboard box under the bridge that you're able to access this for? How do they even measure these things?
It's potential. Now in D.C., back to school family surveys found that 60% of students lacked the devices necessary for online education, and 27% lacked the high-speed internet access needed to successfully participate in virtual school. And then if you want to take a look at Miami-Dade County, 16,000 fewer students actually enrolled this fall compared to last year. In Miami-Dade County is heavily minority population. So if you're looking at who's being affected most about this, it's not those white kids that we like to talk about and yell about and complain about.
But you see the argument, the counter argument is this just shows how rampant white privilege is.
Yeah, absolutely.
White privilege. That,
but who's in control in those areas as well?
Who?
In LA?
In LA?
It's all the Democrats leading the way. So if you want to talk about who's at fault, why this white supremacy, how about we talk about the government officials? Who's at fault? Teachers' unions. Who's at fault?
I think there's a lot of blame that goes on the teachers' unions with this. How many stories have we done about teachers' union people when they weren't going to school? Were taking vacations to remember Mexico and Jamaica,
Bahamas,
and the Caribbean.
For sure.
We actually have a group of was it one city in California that was actually using stimulus money they got from the state for COVID to give their teachers vacation bonuses. We've also got Randy Weingarten, the union boss at the second largest teachers union in the country, who came out last week. We did a story about it. All gung-ho for to classes to start in the fall because, millions of public school kids are vanishing. That's money out of their pockets, although she even amended that. Came back a couple of days ago and said, but they're going to have masks on in the fall. They're going to have to social distance in the fall. So the teachers unions can't get out of their own way. They what this shows us is they see your kids as a number, a financial number. Each kid represents so much money for so many school districts. That's it. If they could find a way to make that money on your kids and never, ever have to teach them in person again, they'd go for it. It's all about the money.
Well, and as we've noted many times, if you're talking about a disproportionate number of these students who aren't being engaged, being Black, being Latino, being Native American, ELL students, homeless students. Those are the votes that the Democrats want. If the Democrats can get the minorities to vote for them, it keeps them in office, and it creates this cycle, which we've seen throughout the country. But it really, when you put it into perspective in terms of our children and how this is affecting them, it's generations, it's the next generation to keep it going. So it's not just cyclical here for one generation, it's to get to the next generation.
It's been said many times by many smarter people than us that the Democrat plantation is run by a artificially dumbed down minority families by keeping them in the dark, keeping them ignorant. This ignorance, which you and I see as a crisis in education, is exactly what they want. You are breeding tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars of people who cannot look after themselves, unable to get jobs, unable to have careers, unable to be entrepreneurs, who for the next 100 years will rely exclusively on government for everything, will turn to government for every aspect of life, therefore ushering in, finally, the Democrat social utopia.
And if even now the New York Times is noting what's happening to our schools and how much education is being lost, we can finally talk about it. And so what they're saying is that studies of how much learning American students have lost in the past year are underway, but the preliminary reports are mostly grim. Even one of the more optimistic surveys found significant losses in math, with a doubling of the proportion of students described as sliders because they had moved down in their rankings compared with a typical year. Another national study from the assessment company Curriculum Associates found a decline of up to 16% in the number of elementary students performing at grade level in math, and up to a 10% in the number of students performing at grade level in reading. And we already know what their grade level is and how low of expectations that is, and then how poor they're even doing that to get to that level. So it's just sliders. They're just going down.
And while the schools are engaging in really what some people have called racism, right? You are systematically disenfranchising more and more brown and black skinned kids and condemning them to this, like you said, the cycle of poverty. What are the teachers unions up to? Meanwhile, teachers unions have been pressing to keep schools closed, claiming in some instances that the push to return to classrooms is racist. So it's racist to have to teach those black and brown skinned kids in class because I guess what? They're going to make you sick. But it's not racist to chase them away and leave them intellectually unprepared for anything in life at all.
Now, we've been talking a lot about how we need parents to stand up. We need teachers who actually want to teach to stand up. And now it's our children who are actually standing up. We have a story about a fourth grader named John Prevenzano who spoke out at the Martin County School District School Board meeting about the district's in-school mask mandate. Okay, fourth grader, 10 years old. He spoke about his experience, and he made note of how teachers defied the mask mandate that they have at their school. And basically, he's looking at these teachers, they're defying it, he's having to wear this mask, and so he, is saying how, well, I guess he learned a new word. Let's just listen to John.
And it seems unfair teachers take their masks off while they yell at us kids and that we need to pull ours up. I asked my mom if there's a word for this, and she said there is. Hypocrisy.
Hypocrisy. Little John learned a new word. So he's, I guess through this whole pandemic, he's learned something. And so he, as you heard, said how it's hypocritical that the teachers are pulling their masks down and then yelling at the students for not having their masks up. And there's a heartbreaking part in his whole speech when basically John explained what happened when he was outside of school and he actually saw his teacher.
A few weeks ago, I ran into my teacher outside of school. She didn't even recognize me because she's never seen my face before. But I knew it was her because she sits at her desk a lot without the mask on. I know my teacher has asthma and everything, but I understand why it's hard for her to wear a mask, and I think she should have that choice. But I should too. I have allergies, and I feel really anxious with my face covered, but I'm not allowed a mask break like her. It seems unfair. All this seems unfair, and it doesn't make sense.
That makes perfect sense from John, not what's actually happening. But little John understands that this is completely illogical and it's unscientific as to what's happening.
Love the name, little Johnny Provenzano, right? Little Goomba Italian. That's exactly right, Johnny. And one of the nice things of having a little boy do it is they didn't cut him off because they would have shut you and me down. And the benefit of this is that he got more time than he otherwise would have, because I guarantee you that school board, they don't mind shutting down mom and dad, but shutting off the mic and dragging a little kid away, even they have enough of a soul to realize that would have been bad PR.
Well, and actually his father, Mike, had gone up in front of the school board and actually kind of was taken out or tried to,
They removed Mike Provenzano.
Yeah, basically.
Mike.
But both Mike and John went on Tucker Carlson then to talk about how having to wear the masks in school makes John feel very anxious.
John, I want to ask you first. You said that wearing a mask makes you feel anxious. Can tell us what you do feel like when you have to wear it at school?
Well, when I have to wear it at school, it almost like builds up stress in me. I'm like, wait, what do I do? It's like, who's this? Who's that? It's like, I don't recognize anybody.
And then on top of that, Tucker actually asked John, okay, so explain to me, what is it that the teachers are actually saying to you? Because you had said that they yell at you if you have your mask on. So what is it that they are actually saying?
They yell at you? What do they say when they yell
sometimes. Oh, they literally say, I'm done. Put your masks on because you're being disrespectful to all of us teachers who have to work really hard. And I'm like, we're also working hard too. It's almost 100 degrees outside, wearing cloth masks, and you expect us not to be hot and complain?
They're kids on top of that, just in any situation. But yeah, they're in Florida. It's hot. The kids are having to wear them too. They're struggling along with you, teachers. But apparently, according to John's account, the teachers are yelling at the kids.
Well, I think John hits on something very important, and I think that this has been backed up, but everything we've seen for the last year and everything we've shown you in the Dr. Duke Show, there are a lot of selfish, self-indulgent, it's all about me teachers. They are the prima donnas of our modern day life. I mean, who else can fail at that rate and get more money every year? Who else can turn out kids that are functionally illiterate again and again and again and get raises for doing so, no questions asked? It's a prima donna position to have, an American teacher. So terribly worried about how it affects you, how you're going to have to struggle, what this means for you as a teacher. We don't want to go back. We don't want to have to go back. We want to be able to stay from home where we feel safe. And if you don't agree with us, you're racist. Well, it's nice to see Johnny do. And the reality is Johnny told us nothing we didn't know. But he sure was cute doing it. And if that raises people's agendas a little bit, if that opens the eyes, so be it.
Well, John was a cute little kid, but we have another youngster who decided to go in front of the school board. And this one, she's a little sassy. She has a little attitude with her. And you know what? The school board needed to hear it.
I don't think barely anybody likes masks in schools. Their children are suffocating. You don't know what it feels like, and it's nonsense. Seriously. Like, why would you do that? Why in the world would you do that? And God created us so we can be free people. And we're not being free here or at public schools. Okay, so I would take your masks off if I were you. And I'm not wearing a mask right now, and I never will as much as I can.
Now, the problem with that is that girl is so young. What's going to happen is they're going to see this as some kind of educational malfeasance on the part of the parents. That mom and dad have brainwashed this kid. That can you imagine Fauci, what he would say about this? Let me play Fauci if I can. Let me try to tamp down all my animal magnetism and charisma to become as Bill Gates like a social creature as Fauci is. Well, the real problem with that is that you've got younger generations now being coached by their parents to believe that masks and vaccines are bad things. This is really not a good thing for America. And when I was back in the 80s working on the AIDS virus, the vaccine that we never got, I never succeeded with that project, but we had to warn people against this kind of stereotyping of children and programming a kid to feel this way. And so, Senator Fauci, I wanted to let you know that we really, really do need masks, and we really need little girls like that to wear their masks.
I'm sorry, did you say something?
I'm Anthony Fauci. I made a lot of money.
The most in the federal government. Congratulations.
I was the highest paid federal employee, and I'm going to use that money, and I'm going to go to Toastmasters and learn how to talk publicly. That's what I'm going to do.
I was going to join Toastmasters. Anyway.
Only if they wear masks.
All the time. Toastmasters wearing masks. Okay, well, the little girl, she said her name at the beginning, which we didn't play that part. I think she said Sarah, but she was kind of sassy, so she wanted to get to her point. But Cook is her last name, so it may be Sarah Cook. And she was in front of the Collier County School Board.
Also in Florida.
Yeah, what's interesting? What's happening in Florida?
You almost wonder, like, this is
Florida, man.
These kids are all auditioning now for America's Kids Got Talent, right? Did you see how fast she went to the hips? She pivoted to the hips quickly.
And if you watch the entire clip, she did, as soon as someone hooted and hollered, then she knows how to work the crowd. She does. I think she gave some good advice that if I would take my mask off if I were you. It's a good on her.
I will never wear masks as long as I cannot do so.
Yes, and another part we didn't play, she says that George Washington created America so we could be free citizens. George Washington created America. At least she's heard it. She didn't say that rapist,
I was gonna say,
slave-owning.
Everybody else is so
white
past George.
Supremacist. George
is so passe.
Now, I will note, and this is where you may come in with that comment about the parent malfeasance, I did find an article about someone named Dan Cook, same last name, could be maybe dad, we don't know, who spoke out at a different school board meeting about a month ago. And at that school board meeting, there were several people. I don't know if Dan was one of them. Again, don't know if that's related at all to our young girl here, but several protesters were escorted out because they were not obliged to wearing the mask. But he was quoted in an article saying, "What I'm asking the school board is simply to be reasonable. Give children at public schools the choice."
Well, the choice will never be the choice that's made by your governing autocrats. That's why they don't give you choice. By definition, you don't get choice because what they want is control, and control is the main issue. But you got to give them credit. If we were listening to Dan Cook, we probably wouldn't have it on. We wouldn't be doing a show on it. Tucker Carlson wouldn't have called. So if getting cute kids and cute, articulate kids in front of the camera forces people to pay attention nationwide, so be it. We'll start putting these kids to work. This week on Instant Classics, as you will see at the end of the week for the Dr. Duke Show, we're going to feature some individuals who are being canceled by the progressive left. One of them is Adam Smith, the great economist. And so what we're going to do is, since they're going to cancel him, we're going to give him some publicity. This is a whole week dedicated to the economic theory of Adam Smith. He was born in 1723, 1790. He died a complete and total figure of the Enlightenment. He was a Scottish economist, a philosopher, a pioneer of political economy, and a key figure during the Scottish Enlightenment, also known as the father of economics. He's your daddy, economics, or the father of capitalism. Smith wrote two classic works, really important books. One is called The Theory of Moral Sentiments, and the other one is his magnum opus, The Wealth of Nations, which is the Bible of emergent capitalism. So, Adam Smith, you got it right in all the ways that Karl Marx would get it wrong 100 years later. So let's take a look at some quotes from Adam Smith. "I have never known much good done by those who affected to trade for the public good." Oh, wait a minute. Stop. He just called out all the progressive left, Antifa, Black Lives Matter, and cancel culture. Go back to the quote. "I have never known much good be done by those who affect to trade for the public good." Those whose job is public welfare, public safety, social justice. You know, the funny thing is, not much good ever gets done by them. How about this one? "Virtue is more to be feared than vice, because its excesses are not subject to the regulation of conscience." That's a brilliant quote. C.S. Lewis would say something like it a couple hundred years later. Let me parse that. Virtue is more frightening. We should be worried about people with excessive virtue over people with excessive vice. Why? Because its excesses are not subject to the conscience. When people do bad things, they engage in vice, the conscience, at least, Adam Smith says, makes them feel a little bad for it. But when people do bad things in the name of excessive virtue, when they go overboard on sanctimony and self-righteousness, there is no regulation of conscience. In other words, the more extreme your virtue signaling, the less conscience will bother you as you try to cancel and shut down anybody who stands in your way. And finally, the real tragedy of the poor is the poverty of their aspirations. I love it. I get it. There are some people who tumble into poverty, but it's not their fault. Other people are born into it. But look at what that means, especially in a free country like ours. The real tragedy of the poor, so many of our poor, is the poverty of their aspirations. They aim higher in nothing, not their only worldview, but in their own ambitions. They don't aim any higher than the poverty they find themselves in, which guarantees that they're going to stay poor.
All right, just a quick reminder that the best way to access our content is to download our Freedom Project Media app. Simply search Freedom Project in your app store and make sure when you download that you allow for notifications. And if you enjoy our content, please consider joining the Patriot Club. Your one-time $99 tax-deductible donation allows us to keep bringing you all of the stories every day. Simply visit patriotclub.us to get signed up. That's patriotclub.us. And of course, as a little thank you, we'll give you our signature tumbler. Now, before we go, let's show some love to our Patriot Club members. And today, we're giving a shout out to Trent from Camden, Arizona. Trent, thank you for supporting us.
And that's going to do it for our show. This is Freedom Project. I'm Dr. Duke. She's Katie. And until next time, stay educated, my friends.